Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I am pleased to be here with some of the publishers from Canon Publishing. I have John Holmes and Michael Morton. Thank you both for being here today.
Sure. Thanks for having us, Jonathan.
Yeah, our pleasure.
So the first question I have for you is, how did Canon Publishing start originally? What was the impetus to create the company?
I'll answer that one. So I've been an author, self-published for 10, 11 years now, right? And I learned a lot of hard lessons coming up in this new industry by myself. And I started working. I've always had people come to me and say, "Hey, how'd you do it? How can I get into this stuff?" And I would give them advice and everything. And then I started working with Lucas Markham, a friend of mine, an author, to publish one of his books. And we decided that, hey, I said, why not form a company, right? And have this be something that we can work with up and coming writers and give advice to people. And we concentrate a lot on finding new talent and a lot of veterans. I'm a veteran, as is Mike. We like to train people, to develop people in their capacity to excel, and it kind of fills a need for me now that I'm retired to have people to work with, to bring them from baby writers to successful writers, right? Not multimillionaires, but maybe someday, right? So
Right.
that was my impetus for starting the company, and the Canon name is I'm a longtime artilleryman, so I said, hey, Canon, why not, right? So that's where it came from.
Nice. And then I'm assuming based off that you do a lot of military focused storytelling, but what other genres do you guys dip your toes into?
Go for it, Mike.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we started out military science fiction, but we have since branched out, and there's no one particular genre that we call home anymore. We have published fantasy, military fantasy. The Fay Wars.
Mhm.
We've done just regular type science fiction. We have gone into or are going to go into the urban fantasy realm and possibly even looking at other types of fantasy. So we're exploring and expanding. It all really depends on where we can find authors who want to come work for us.
Yeah. And the military science fiction is a limited genre, so we'd like to get out into more areas. We've done action thrillers, also Athenium. It really, when a writer comes to us with a good story, we'll take a look at it, regardless of what the genre is. Obviously, we have a certain fan base that we have to write to, but I think as long as you tell a good story and you have good characters, it could really be in any genre. And if we wanted to make money, we would write romance books, but I haven't got there yet. So
That's yeah, that is the thing that a lot of publishers are realizing is where
yeah,
that money is now. That's why fantasy is now taken over by romantasy in a lot of
yep,
bookstores.
yeah.
So I have basically like two questions that are kind of interrelated. One is what year did the company start? And then also with that, how many books do you guys generally publish about per year?
Well, that's a loaded question. Well, officially, it was formed in 2019. That's when I filed the paperwork. It really didn't get started until about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, when we introduced Fay Wars as our first real uh, multi-author title series, right? So that was
Mhm.
about 3 years ago, and we've been slowly building up. I think we have 30 something books out now, but next year we're planning on, Mike, what are we up to now? 34 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Because we're getting a reputation as being, people who treat you well and are, you know, willing to work with people. And a lot of people have been coming to us and saying, hey, I'm interested in working with you. And our problem, and it's not really a bad problem to have, is that we're growing exponentially. And where do we find the staff to keep up with that? So, but yeah, we're doubling our output next year.
That's interesting because I've talked to, a bunch of publishers that I met and that were at LibertyCon, and
Mhm.
almost all of them all started between like 2018 to 2022, so in that kind of time frame there. And then almost all of them have had this rapid expansion in the last year or so, going into next year, that's showing them putting out a lot more titles. And so I think that's part of the we're seeing a lot more people moving into the indie space, and that's why we're seeing this success now.
Right. Word gets around, and I think the technology has been kind of reaching a point where there's a niche to fill, right?
Hmm.
And the bigger trade publishers are kind of falling on their faces a little bit. And people are starting to realize that we put out quality stuff. We're not just a bunch of hacks. Well, sometimes I am, but we put out some quality stories, and people are learning to read our stuff. And a lot of us in the industry talk to each other, and we help each other out, and that helps develop the companies as we go. So
So, what has been your process for finding authors? I know some publishers, they do exclusively agents, some do exclusively open calls, some work with people that they've done in anthologies and stuff, some do a hybrid of all three. So, what is y'all's process for when you want to find a new author to work with?
I go down to the docks in Shanghai and I hit them over the head and I throw them in a bag and drag them onto the can and ship. Um, no, Mike, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so we've kind of done most of that except for working with agents. We had our first contest this year. We call it the High Caliber Award, and it was an anthology of novellas, and got a lot of interest for that. A lot of good stories. It was really hard getting narrowing them down to the ones to give hand over to the judges. But out of that, we've got two of them. Two of those authors are definitely going to. Oh, three of them are definitely going to be writing at least one book for us, if not a trilogy. And then places like LibertyCon, right? As John said, we got people coming up to us saying, "Hey, so do you guys publish this kind of book?" And as John said, as long as you're telling a good story with good and interesting characters, hey, we'll take a look at it. Other places, I picked up a manuscript from an author at Fantasy, which is in Raleigh. So yeah, conventions are great, and then of course the networking that you find on social media, right? You reach out to other people and you say, or they reach out to you and you have a dialogue about what do you want to write, or hey, you like one of our shared universes? Well, hey, pitch us an idea.
So, when it comes to editing, there's also just like finding your authors, the way you edit your authors. There's this usually a wide swath. You have the very light touch editors who are very much, it's your story, I'm just tweaking it a little bit, or the ones that it's going to be a good story. So if we have to revamp and change the whole thing, we're going to do that. And then there's some in the middle who just, it varies project to project. So what's y'all's general process when it comes to editing each book?
Well, some of them it's different. There's editing for story, and then there's editing for uh content, I guess you would say, right?
Readability.
Yeah, I mean, I trust me, I tell a great story, but my writing drives my wife bonkers because she's a bit of a grammar expert and she won't read my books anymore, right? So I've gotten better at it, obviously. Mike, the reason that Mike is now our fantasy editor is because he is great at working directly with uh, authors in that genre and saying, okay, listen, these are the plot holes in your story, right? This could be better. Sometimes we just get a manuscript dropped in our laps that's great, some
Yeah.
little corrections here and there, and away we go. So
And
it's a varied process. Go ahead, Mike.
yeah, as I say, well, and it depends on the experience level of the author. A brand new author is probably going to require a lot more work, as John said, to talk about story holes and other things. We just finished working with one author on a book, his first book. He had a great concept and he had a great emotional hook that was really going to gut punch you near the end, but he buried the lead up to it. And so I'm like, look, you got to expose this. You got to get the readers prepped and primed for it so that they're gonna read that and you're hoping for tears, right? And then you've got our more experienced authors. Shane Greaves is one. He's been publishing for a while. He's published in the Ring of Fire Press, right?
Mhm.
He doesn't require that level of editing. Most of the time, it's more about continuity, right? It's like, hey, you said this in book one, and then you said something different in book three. Got to reconcile those two.
Yeah, my job as the publisher and senior editor I have to decide how we're going to publish things, right? So sometimes, uh, like Dan Kemp, who does the Athenium series, his second book was 140,000 words, and he was still writing it. And I said, Dan, time to stop, chop it down to 90, find a good place to break it, and then use that next part as the kernel for the next book. And that's my job to figure out what's best for publication wise. Because if he kept going, then he would write another 150,000 word book a year from now, right? And I want to continuously deliver product because that's the market. So it's my job to kind of figure out production and how we're going to fit all this stuff into it. So when Mike does a fantasy book, my directive is, okay, great, we got this guy. I looked it over, it looks good. I said, you hand it back to me when it's a final draft, and then I'll take it for, we're going to run it past our line editor, Bill Earl. Right. So Mike hands me the finished book. I trust him to do that part of it. And uh, we just take it from there.
So when it comes to distribution, what general venues are people able to buy your books from, and where do you find that a lot of the success from your books comes? Is it Amazon? Is it your personal website? Is it other? Is it like from conventions? Where do people generally find your books so far?
well, we're exclusively on Amazon right now. Okay.
Okay,
Although we have wide distribution for paperbacks. And we recently found out that Borders is putting us on their online store, which is
well,
great.
that's
Hey, cool.
nice.
Not
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Barnes and
yeah.
Noble, not
Barnes
Borders.
and Noble. Why do I keep saying Borders? Because I'm 56 years old and I grew up with the Borders by my house. Okay, Barnes and Noble. So, it's where those purchases come from. Everywhere we could find a way to pitch it to somebody, right?
Hmm.
So, I have a lot of followers on Amazon because I've been doing this for years. When we get a new author that comes out, we do uh, email marketing. We're always looking for new subscribers. We do a lot of social media pitches. Shane has a goal of posting 10 social media posts per day, right? So he's very successful because he does that. Others, sometimes you got to give them a kick in the pants and say, hey, get out there, right? That's one of the things also that nowadays, it's not just the Canon brand. Authors have to be their own brand
Hmm.
themselves. They have to sell themselves. And some people bring that with them to when they want to work with us. And others we have to help along to figure out their brand. So, and we provide a lot of services for people like that.
Yeah.
We do
I,
educational videos. We talk about
mhm.
how to build email lists, all those things. We're trying to teach the authors how to be successful authors, not just take their money.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Right.
And we found going to conventions, right? Obviously, you want your authors to talk to the fans, and you want them to interact and sell their book. But we've noticed a lot of people coming up and they'll look at the book and they'll read the blurb and they'll listen to what the author's saying, and then the first question will be, "Do you have it on Kindle?" Right? A lot of people, I only read on Kindle, especially some of the older folks who have vision problems or whatever. It's easy to enlarge the text. So of course we say yes, it's on Kindle, but then it stops right there because
yeah.
we didn't have anything at the moment to show them.
Right.
So now we started putting QR codes to the Amazon web pages for the books
Oh,
at our
that's
tables. So
smart.
people can scan the QR code right away when they're talking to the author and hopefully buy the book right then and there.
Oh, that's
For
a
those of you who
really
are
good idea.
watching, okay, sorry, got to advertise, right? See
Oh
how
yeah.
it is. We put these up when we do our panels. We have these in front of us, right? Also, we sell approximately 100 Kindle books to every one paperback. So
Wow.
yeah, it's just that's the market nowadays, and we don't distribute to bookstores and stuff, right? Yeah, we're working on that, but one thing at a time. So
That's such an interesting fact about the book business is because they talk about how much, ebooks are going, and I exclusively read print books. It's
right.
the only way I read, and so it's just shocking when I hear like a statistic like that. That's like 100 to 1, or some publishers I know are like 90 to 1 or something. I'm just like,
Yeah.
wow, that's an incredible ratio. That really shows that you have to be willing to do that.
Well, or maybe we're just missing a huge market, right? But I mean, one thing at a time. Like I said, we are very concentrated on growing slowly and properly and not expanding and blowing up. You know what I'm saying? Or falling on our faces. So, uh, that is one of our authors has volunteered to figure out how to do distribution through Ingram and get the
Mhm.
paperbacks out on the shelves, right? So that's also a lot of the people that are writing for the company often become parts of the company, right? So
Yeah.
Mike actually is one of the authors. He wrote a great book in my Fallen Empire series called Silent Violence, and uh, we just talk a lot. And he loves fantasy, and I'm like, hey, you want to be the fantasy editor, right? You'll get a cool T-shirt out of it, right? And
Still
he
waiting on
said,
that
sure.
T-shirt.
No, you're wearing it right now. Don't give me
No,
that. Right?
no. This is the one you got before the fantasy. This is
Oh,
the
okay.
the senior editor.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. Right. So I'll pay you in T-shirts. But yeah, and we're trying slowly. So Kevin Harris, who's the guy who won our high caliber fantasy, our high caliber award with a great fantasy story. He's going to be writing a novel from it, but he's also going to be stepping in and saying, "Hey, I'm going to help you figure out distribution, right? Because it benefits him also." But we're very much a team. We're
Mhm.
we try hard to be a team. So you probably saw us running around with our team shirts on.
Yes, I did see that. Yes.
Yeah, I should put numbers on the back, like baseball jerseys.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be clever. Oh, I like
Yeah.
that. When it comes to your cover art for your various book series, what is the general philosophy? Do you guys have a style that you prefer to put on there, or do you try to vary it between different genres and book series? How do you guys have cover that philosophy?
Well, obviously with series, you need continuity,
Mhm.
right? People want to see the same characters on the cover, and that can be hard. Uh, Cover artists can be very, very expensive. I fortunately found a great guy on Fiverr who I give him stick figure drawings and photo examples of what I want, and he turns them into great covers. Um, we're experimenting with AI stuff because honestly, we do a lot of editing and creating off of the basic AI image and try and really put our own stamp on it. But the majority of our stuff is done through an artist, and it gives an authenticity to the cover, right?
Yeah.
So,
There'll be
for,
times the author, we'll ask the author, so what do you want on the cover? And they'll use AI to say, can it look something like this? And then that's
yes,
something John can hand to the artist and say, okay, do your take on this. And this is kind of what the author is envisioning is happening.
yeah, I do a lot of AI generation, and exactly as Mike says, I will send it to the author and say, hey, like it to look like this, and okay, I'm not the greatest AI artist in the world, but he'll be able to get the concept, and he'll take that and turn it into artwork. And we're always looking for new artists. The problem is the old expression, cheap, good, or quick, right?
Right. Yeah,
You
you
can
can have two
get
of the
two,
three. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
and unfortunately, cheap is usually the one that has to, or good is usually the one that wins out because we're in business. We got to try and keep our costs as low as possible. So it's a business thing. You got to sit down and really figure it out. But as far as covers, we try and give an image that's directly taken from the book, right?
Hmm.
So if you have a military firefight going on, right? Like, well, let's take Mike's Silent Violence cover. He has a bunch of people who are Marines, who are space Marines, who are boarding a space station, right? Under heavy fire. So if you see the cover, uh, put up the, it's a space battle scene, right? But it kind of reflects what's actually happening. Okay. Um, we probably get a lot more attention if we put like, I don't know, women in tight spacesuits running around with laser rifles or something like that, right? Like the old 50s covers and everything. But
Well, there's some modern covers that are doing that too.
yeah, I
So.
know.
Yeah.
Uh, but we try and keep it kind of true to the spirit of what we're doing. So,
And,
and I
and
love this.
one of the things we've started experimenting with on the covers is after we've shown a couple of like AI type pieces to the author, and we're kind of like, well, is these are like the two top ones that we like, and we're not sure which one we like better because they're two different styles. We'll go to the fans on like Facebook and say, all right, guys, you know, no
What do you?
information about the book, but here's the two different covers. Which one do you like? And then we'll see what the fans like.
Yeah, that's one of the big benefits of social media. I mean, we have a fan group, the Command Post, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of our authors have their own individual fan groups, and we can instantly engage with the fans and talk to them and say, hey, um, give us feedback on this, right? And we even put like parts of chapters or ask questions, right? Like Mike's an Air Force guy, right? And he works for Space Force now. I'm an artilleryman, right? So obviously Mike's much smarter than I am. But if I need an answer on like, how does a satellite, what speed would they be orbiting around the Earth? I don't know, right? But Michael give me this long, huge, detailed explanation, and I'll say thanks and use like one sentence from it. But it's accurate. You know what I'm saying? So we can use our resources to be accurate and actually hit the fans up because they have millions of years of experience, well, maybe thousands, in all kinds of different areas. So that's something like I was a big Robert E. Howard fan growing up, right? Reading Conan stuff. He never called me up and said, hey, what do you think I should do on the next Conan story? Now, obviously, I'm not that old, all right, but you know what I mean, right? But now we can do that. We can test market on fans and see what works.
So, I wanted to ask you guys about some of your specific series that you guys have
Mhm.
published from your different genres, and give you guys the opportunity to give us like the quick pitch about what the series is about. So, if anyone sees that, if they find it interesting, they know what it is. So, the first one I want you guys to talk about is your Irregular Scout Team One.
Okay. Regular Scout Team One was my first foray into fiction. All right. I was watching The Walking Dead and I kept complaining about there's no military on the show. Right. I was watching like the first episodes and everything and how unrealistic the actions taken by the people in there were. I mean, it's a zombie show, right? But if you're gonna write something, who cares about the zombies? Make the characters real, right? And my wife said, "Would you stop complaining about it and go do something about it?" Right? So I did. The very first lines I ever wrote was, what sucks about the zombie apocalypse? There's no toilet paper, right? Okay, right? Because hey, it's gonna go, right? And obviously that was proven by COVID, right? This is back in like 2000, right? Um,
That's so true.
yeah, and also toilet paper is actually edible by bugs and stuff like that. So paper products will disappear pretty quickly, right? So I started writing that, and I wrote like 11 books in the series, and they were shorter books. One of my weaknesses is telling a long story. I'm a short storyteller, right? And then it actually went pretty well. I started on social media back in the day when you didn't have to pay through the nose to get anybody to notice you. And
Mhm.
I had a military cartoon strip called PowerPoint Ranger that had a lot of following, and I started putting chapters from Scout Team up there, and people loved it, and I ran with it from there. And we've been re-releasing it, putting the books in order because one of the curses of not knowing what I'm doing was I would jump 2 years ahead, right? And
Mhm.
then be like, because I had a great story idea, and then I would be like, oh, but back here, or I'll write a book about what happened when they first got together, right? And then fans are like, well, explain how this happened. And okay, I'll write a book about that. So one of the great things about the current publishing model is I can take all those books down and I can remaster them and put them in order and fix all my stupid grammar mistakes, although it's still in there. I always find it, and republish them as a coherent series. And that's worked very well for them. So the basic premise behind it is just like the old cavalry scouts in the Midwest and after the Civil War, you had a mix of soldiers and civilians. Like Kit Carson was a cavalry scout, right? But he was a civilian hired by the army. Uh, in the zombie apocalypse, you need people who can survive outside of what's left of civilization and find out what's still out there. So a mix of army soldiers and civilians go out in front of the army to figure out where the bad guys are. Do the bridges still exist? Can we drive down this road? That kind of stuff. So that's the premise of the regular scout team. It's
And
about the
then,
team,
yeah.
right? Yep. Go
And
ahead.
then, Michael, you talked earlier about you guys mentioned the Fay Wars series. Can you give me a little bit of the pitch for that series?
Yeah. So Lucas Markham, who helped John start the company, um, he doesn't like elves. He
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 hates.
really hates elves. Um, so he came up with the concept working with John and saying, so what if the elves were real and they got kicked off the planet back when magic was failing? and magic comes back, and with it come the elves, and they want revenge on those puny humans that did them wrong. So Fay Wars is an ongoing series. Basically starts with the invasion sequence, right? John's first book in there, it's New York, right?
Yep, of course it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
You know,
Portals open, these magic portals open all over New York, and the main character happens to be in the middle of the city, and when that happens, and he's got a front row seat to dragons and elves and orcs and all these other things pouring through these portals, and yeah, we've gotten through the invasion sequence. We might write another few books on invasion,
yep.
but the nice thing about the Fay Wars series is we bring in other authors from around the country. They write the areas of the country that they know. John wrote New
Ah.
York because he's from New York. Lucas wrote what? Where did he write? Philadelphia,
Yeah, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, right? We've got another author that's going to start writing for us. He's out here in Colorado with me, so he's going
Yep.
to talk about what's going on in Colorado.
James
So
did California,
James
right?
in California, yes, yeah. So we're pulling in, stories from across the country. Think about the World War Z novel, the
Yeah.
original novel by Max Brooks, which was
Hmm.
stories from around the world compiled into one thing. Well, this is going to be series with events around the United States. I don't know that we're necessarily going to go international yet, but we're definitely doing the United States.
Yeah, it's definitely a military versus the elves, machine guns and tanks against dragons and swords,
And spells.
spell enhanced armor and swords. I mean, you can't really just shrug off a heavy duty bullet, but these guys can. And it's great. I wrote the first book in like a month, I think, and I just sat. The tail just came at me. It was just like, this is great. I got to have an epic showdown between the 69th Infantry Regiment and the elves over the Brooklyn Bridge. And I'm a New Yorker, so that was like kind of, and I'm Irish, so that was great. So and Mike, you gonna write a book for that series?
If I
Are
get
you gonna
time.
are you gonna help Mark walk his way through Colorado?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Mark can handle Colorado. I might do Texas if nobody picks up Texas in
Go
between.
for it. Go for it.
Oh,
That'll be interesting.
there's so much ripe opportunity for Texas
Oh
to
Yeah,
yeah.
fight
yeah,
in
Oh
the
yeah.
elves.
absolutely.
Oh, that would be so entertaining.
Yes.
And then you have another series I wanted to ask about, which is the Athenium series.
Okay. So Dan Kemp is an infantry veteran, right? Afghanistan and Iraq, both, I think. And he's retired now. And we were at LibertyCon 2 years ago, and I helped run the range for LibertyCon and our range day. And I got to talk with Dan because I like old guns and he likes old guns. He likes old guns a lot more than I do, but and he's like, "Yeah, I wrote a book, because I'm like, oh, cool, send it to me." He's like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So uh, it is based around a modern, what we call a private military company that does intelligence gathering on contract from the government. And that means listening to phone taps, kind of like combination of the NSA and the CIA together, but private, right? But still working for the good guys. And they intercept a phone call that says that a bunch of drug dealers are putting $1 billion in cash together in a container in Mississippi to ship south, right? So what do you do? Do you tell Uncle Sam, or do you go destroy it, or do you keep it, right?
Mhm.
Do you take it? And then what do you do with it when you have $1 billion, right? So Dan spun a tale that's almost like James Bond epic kind of thing, right?
I think of it
And
as Tom Clancy on speed.
yes, yes. And it's all about intelligence gathering, actions on the target, buying Rolex watches, going, exotic places around the world. It's a very clandestine environment he lives in. Think John Wick, kind of, right? All this stuff happening behind the scenes, right? The only thing that held it up is we had to get a Department of Defense review to make sure we weren't talking about things that we weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
That's how accurate it actually was. And they took a red pen to it pretty heavy. And the second book is out now, and it's just more continuing in those adventures. It's a really good series that's different from what we've done. So,
All right. And then I did want to give you guys an opportunity if there were to from like spend a minute to pitch your upcoming series, anything that you want to pitch that's might be coming out soon.
Want to talk about the fantasy stuff, Mike?
Yeah, sure. We or John was approached at LibertyCon by Scott Huggins.
Yep.
If you're not familiar with him, I think it was 2 years ago. He won the Baen Fantasy and Science Fiction Short Story Awards in the same year. And
Wow.
he got a trilogy with Baen out of it.
No,
Uh,
it's with CKP.
oh, with CKP. Sorry, my
Yeah.
bad. But he came to us and said, "Hey, I have a gunpowder fantasy book. Would you like to take a look at it?" Sure. Yeah. And it's amazing. I have not read a gunpowder fantasy before, and now I'm hooked. I really like what he did, and he took two very simple concepts, and I'm not going to reveal what they are because it'll. I want people to be surprised by this, but he took two very simple concepts, meshed them together, and you have a 180,000 word book out of it. That's the first of a trilogy.
Okay.
Explain what gunpowder
Yeah,
magic
so
is.
gunpowder fantasy is you've got magic, you've got swords, but you also have basic level firearms, matchlocks, flintlocks, those type of things. You have grenades, bombs, cannon, nothing super fancy, but you do have a bit of technology to compete with the magic.
Yeah, so we're really hitting the fantasy stuff hard.
Yeah,
And then the other one, we have a series called Fallen Empire, which is another universe built specifically for authors to write in,
Mhm.
uh, modeled on the fall of Western Roman Empire. Okay, where the it's an alien empire and it falls apart, and all the subject races, humans and other aliens, are kind of fighting amidst the spoils for 20 years after the empire falls. And there's the other half of the empire that's still existing, doing shenanigans, right? And then after the war's over, you have literally millions of soldiers who are demobilized and they need to go do something, and they form mercenary companies. And I love David Drake,
Mhm.
and this was my kind of homage to him. And I wrote a book called The Irish Brigade, set in the 28th century. Mercenaries. Mike wrote Silent Violence. We have two or three other books in the series, and more coming out. So that's more of
yeah.
a military space opera kind of thing.
Yeah, we're going to have an anthology coming out here later this year called On Hensley Station.
Yes.
Hensley Station is a bar in a kind of a think of it like a Deep Space Nine type of space station where races can all intermingle and interact without necessarily doing a whole lot of violence to each other.
Some,
Yeah,
but
some violence, some, but uh,
underhanded. Yeah.
otherwise it wouldn't be a fun story to tell.
Right.
But yeah, so we're inviting a bunch of authors, either some who have written previously and others who haven't, and we're going to have that out to kind of in show another side of the universe, not just the military corporations and companies that are working out there, but some of the other things that go on behind the scenes.
Yeah, we really try hard to flesh out our shared universes with little details and make it not just about the military stuff or the Federation or whatever, but the people that are living it too. So um, yeah, and sometimes we fall on our faces. I published a fantasy book last year, and people were so used to me writing post-apocalyptic, they're like, "What is this?" It, I loved it, but
Oh,
it just didn't go anywhere. So sometimes we fail.
one other book we should talk about.
Yeah.
It's our first foray, and we think it's the first in a new genre. We call it tactical romance.
Yes. Okay.
Jonathan LaForce, who is a former Marine artilleryman, so he and John get along really well. He wrote a book that it's a romance book, but it takes place on a forward operating base in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
and a company or a platoon of U.S. Marine artillerymen come to help a British engineer unit who are trying to build an airfield, and they're giving them security. Two-thirds of the British personnel are women. So if you have been in the military before, you can understand the shenanigans that can happen when men and women are in close quarters on the same place.
Yes.
And the main character finds his love interest there.
They both do. The two main characters.
Yeah, the
One,
two main characters. Yeah.
yeah.
So So
We'll
yeah,
see how that goes.
we'll see how that turns out. We're excited about it. That's what I was telling you about, where there's a really emotional scene that I helped the author bring out. I'm really hoping that people read it. They're gonna say, John, you're killing me. You're making me cry. So
Yeah, yeah, and we're willing to take some chances,
yeah,
and and one of the good things about us is I promise everybody that they'll make enough money off of us to take their significant other out to dinner, and anything more than that is gravy, right? Or if you don't have one, you can get a professional or a paid Tinder account. But but we'll make as much money as you make as the author, right? We're not trying to screw anybody over, and it's their work, it's not ours. So um, yeah,
yeah,
that's what I
we
got.
take pride in paying on time.
So it's good.
Yes, sometimes I'm late a day, but yeah, we do. We pay and we do the best we can. So
All right, so I wanted to also lastly give you guys a moment to kind of pitch the different areas that people can find you online, whether it's your Amazon page, your website, your social media accounts, if you have anything else that you guys want to pitch like that.
sure. Primary place to go to find our stuff is our website, right? Canonpublishing.us, and that's two N's. All right, one word, canonpublishing.us, and all of our books are there, linked back to Amazon. All right, we have our social media, our page, which is Canon Publishing on Facebook. All right, our audience tends to generally be older, so we're sticking with Facebook for now, but we're going to be expanding into other areas. The Command Post is our fan group on Facebook. Mike, what else am I thinking of here?
Um, well, obviously you can find us on Amazon directly by going to your page or my page or any number of the authors' pages if you're
Authors
familiar
pages.
with our stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
What else? Instagram. Some of us, we don't have a Canon Instagram, I don't think, but we have, a
We
bunch of
do.
us have. Oh, we do. Okay. So we got
Yeah,
Instagram as well.
yeah. So my personal phone number is 518-867-5309. And you can just call me any time of the day. All right. Jonathan's like, what does that mean? Sorry, it's an old song. Okay. All
Okay.
right. Okay.
I
I'm not actually giving my phone number
I
out.
was about to say I
Really
was
dating yourself, man.
Yeah, whatever. Right.
you I I've heard some bold stuff in some of the interviews that I've done with publishers on new ways of trying to connect with people, but that was a
No.
first.
And our general audience might get that. So, but no, so canonpublishing.us. We have a Discord, but everybody keeps telling me to use it, but I don't have enough time. So I'm not even sure what the Discord address is. Uh, I'm on World of Warships as PowerPoint Ranger. Um, PBTRANGER if you want to chat with me on World of Warships, because that's what I do instead of writing now, apparently. Right, Mike?
Sure. Well,
And
I'm on Mech Warrior Online when I get
yeah,
stuck on a particular plot point.
right. So, but basically, the main thing is canonpublishing.us, the command post, or our Facebook page, Canon Publishing. And our next convention appearance will be at NASFIC in Buffalo next weekend, not this weekend coming up, but the weekend of the 19th, I think.
Okay.
And our guys are scattered all over the country, so we do appear in a bunch of different places. I think, Mike, you're going to be at what, Writers of the Future in January? Is that what it's called?
No. Well, actually, my next appearance is going to be Pecan in
Yeah,
Dallas. That'll be in September. So I'll
right.
be running the Canon flag there, and then I'll be at Superstars Writing Seminar in Colorado Springs in
That's it,
February.
Superstars.
Yeah.
And then the next big company to do will be at MarsCon in Virginia at the end of
Yeah.
May or end of January. Sorry. And then we're trying to decide whether we're going to come back. Well, I'm going to come back to LibertyCon, but in any case, we will be well represented there next year. So,
Well, thank you to both of you for coming onto the channel and doing this interview with me.
sure.
Our pleasure. Yeah.
I watched your LibertyCon outtakes. Those are great, man. You're
Oh,
really good at
thank you.
this. So,
It
yeah,
was a lot of work trying to cover all of that.
and you
I
dig
still
it
didn't
out.
get to
Oh,
get everything. Yeah.
one other thing, most of our books are on Audible. I think we have not, well, not most of them, but our popular titles are on Audible. They generally come out within a month of the book dropping. So on our website, we have a tab for the Audible books, or you can go on Audible and look for the individual titles there too. So
That's good because that's also a growing
It
area is
is. It
audiobooks.
is. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on the channel. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.